Commissioner Peter Wood, ANC 1C03.
Hi, good afternoon. So my name is Peter Wood. I'm a resident of Ward 1 and currently serve as Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner at Adams Morgan. I'm here today to testify in support of expanding and improving DC's violence reduction programs. I think there are a lot of people who have similar perspectives. So I particularly urge Council to follow the advice of DC residents by making our violence reduction investments more efficient and by reducing overlapping services and mismanaged communication across agencies. Unfortunately, this is not a new thing that we've discussed. So many DC neighborhoods have seen trends in crime go the wrong way the past few years, and Adams Morgan, unfortunately, is no exception. In fact, I think Adams Morgan is actually a pretty useful case study for what's going on in the district right now. Statistically speaking, Adams Morgan isn't a particularly violent neighborhood, at least over the past decade or so, but perceptions have changed. While the risk of becoming victim of violent crime remains in absolute terms fairly low, not all residents feel that way. And this is especially because aggressive types of theft have become more common, particularly armed vehicular robberies and breaking into apartment complexes. We've also seen multiple unrelated homicides over the past year, all of which involve firearms. One specific incident, fortunately not a homicide, that occurred in the single member district I represent reminds me why reinforcing our violence reduction programs is so important. Several months ago, some constituents informed me of an encounter that turned physical. A man had been napping on a regular basis in the lobby of a large apartment building. Even though he wasn't a resident of the building and he was technically trespassing, he didn't really cause any issues, so residents mostly left him alone. But one day, a confrontation escalated. He began yelling, and ultimately, he threw a cup of wine onto a resident. Thankfully, the altercation didn't get worse, but it easily could have. I bring this up because of what I later learned. This man, whose behavior is inexcusable, used to live nearby. Following family and financial difficulties, he lost his home and was living on the streets. In the cold months, he found warmth in this apartment lobby of his former stomping grounds. This type of scenario is not uncommon and is exactly where violence interrupters demonstrate their value. Identifying individuals whose life circumstances have pushed them to the edge, then working with them to back away before resorting to violence. DC's role as a leader in this regard is something we need to solidify. As I believe everyone in this meeting is well aware, crime is an incredibly divisive, polarizing, emotionally charged subject. There are also many conflicting but equally important opinions on how to reduce violent crime. That's likely because violence is complicated. There are many causes for violent behavior, many ways in which violence is perpetrated, and different people respond to different forms of intervention differently. There are also many kinds of violence. Domestic violence is one category I've repeatedly testified on. It's a delicate subject, but victims of domestic violence are too frequently treated as if they're invisible. Please don't ignore their importance. That also goes for prevention, that was said earlier today. Similarly, the violent conditions that often lead to suicide and self-harm, including DC's overdose emergency, are widely overlooked or dismissed as taboo. We need to keep changing our collective mentality. More types of violence deserve our energy than solely the easily seen ones. Amidst all this, violence reduction professionals can serve as glue, and they do serve as glue in DC, adaptive and binding disjoined sectors of society together. But we need an honest, thorough, transparent, and well-planned approach to accomplish this. So kind of breaking it down into three categories. First, things that we know. We know that in DC, we have good data. We have good data collectors. I think it's the term that's often we're robust in the information that we need to inform our decisions. And we have local experts, people that are on this call or this meeting today, people that are very invested in local communities, people that know DC, people that know federal and local legislation, people that know the international dynamics. We have qualified, talented people right here in DC. We have engaged, proactive communities, people who, again, know the situation well, know the people well. And we also have programs to address these things. And Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement and OAG's Cure the Streets are two examples, though they differ in style and probably effectiveness. So that leads us to next, what needs to be done? One suggestion that I support is exploring the idea of combining those two programs, Cure the Streets and Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement. We also need to address the physical and mental health needs of violence interrupters and people that are staffs of a program like that. think that's been brought up multiple times today, but making sure that people are supported in multiple ways, especially as individuals, to thrive in those positions is quintessential. And that also includes educating staff and continuing to support training needs. There are a lot of ways that any person in any position needs to be up to date on the skills that they will use to succeed. And this is a particularly important one. And violence interruption staff need support beyond just legislation. I think I've actually heard multiple people say this today when I've been able to listen, which is that this is not solely a governmental problem. Of course, DC Council and DC government more broadly has an important role, but there are a lot of actors that need to come together for us to see change first happen and then be sustained. So how do we do it? Building trust is the broad way, but it's, I think, the basis for how this goes. Building trust, building community, building relations between people, so that rather seeing each other as potential threats, we see each other as potential collaborators. That's very important. Supporting workers' investment and making sure it's managed in wise ways, also something that is very important. Much easier said than done, I'm aware, but we need to pursue it. And aiming for results that don't pertain to a specific election cycle. It's convenient to do so, I understand, and we all have our motivations for framing how we get progress done, but we need to collectively make something that lasts beyond any person's particular career span. I truly believe DC
Commissioner,
leaders and
You're very over
Two
time.
more.
If I can ask you to summarize and wrap up.
do 2 sentences, yeah. I truly believe DC leaders and elected officials, including mayor and council, are taking right steps to reversing our city's crisis of violent crime. My one request, above all, is that you use your authority to create something bigger than yourselves and help make DC a safe place to live in longevity, regardless of who is in charge. Thank you.